Spider-Man, Spider-Man, stay in the MCU, Spider-Man. Spider-Man is perhaps Marvel's most recognizable superhero. Everyone knows the classic story of Peter Parker. Nerdy high school kid gets bitten by a radioactive spider, develops spider-like powers, and has to learn that with great power comes great responsibility. To the joy of many fans, Spider-Man made his MCU debut in Captain America's Civil War, with Tom Holland as Peter Parker, and has appeared in 2 of his own movies since.
You're the Spiderling, crime-fighting spider. You're Spider-Boy?
Because of the ongoing dispute between Disney and Sony, the future of the Web-slinger is uncertain. But for now, we have 2 great solo Spidey films with plenty of classic heroes and villains alike. Today, we'll be checking out Spider-Man Homecoming and its sequel, Far From Home, in this episode of Good to Evil. Hey, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and let's take a look at MCU Spider-Man. Also, if your Spidey sense is tingling, yeah, there are spoilers ahead.
I mean, I'm just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, sir.
As usual, we'll start with the good characters and work our way down, starting with the most pure. Starting off the list is going to be Aunt May. May has been raising Peter on her own for years, always providing the love and support he needs. She wants the best for Peter and is always willing to help him with his social and romantic life, as well as to discipline him when he acts up. May doesn't know that her nephew is Spider-Man until the very end of Homecoming, but she's surprisingly supportive of his superhero work after her initial reaction. She also takes an active role in rebuilding her community after the events of Avengers Endgame by fundraising to help the homeless. Aunt May is an all-around pure character who has raised her nephew well. Swinging into second is our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker. The hero of the franchise is clever, optimistic, selfless, and has a good sense of responsibility. Basically, everything one might want in a superhero. He goes from stopping bike thieves and helping old women across the street to stopping villains with drone armies and saving his friends from falling to their deaths.
I put a tracker on someone. He's a bad guy.
However, he's hit a couple of road bumps along the way. He gets in way over his head early on in his career when he tries to take down Vulture and company by himself to prove his worth to Tony Stark and the Avengers. Also, Peter almost cost everyone on a ferry their lives after he interferes with the FBI's operation to stop a weapons deal. Alright, but to be fair to Peter, what does Tony think the FBI is going to do against thieves and murderers with stockpiles of alien technology?
Those weapons were out there and I try to tell you.
Nevertheless, Tony reprimands Peter for disobeying him and putting himself in harm's way for personal glory. Peter can be a bit reckless, as he accidentally orders a drone strike on one of his classmates to prevent a weird photo of Peter from being shown to MJ.
Yeah, he's a target. He's a target.
That being said, Peter has proven time and time again that he's up to the challenge of being a superhero. After pulling himself from the rubble of a fallen building, he takes down the Vulture without the use of any Stark technology. And although he just wants to enjoy a nice school trip to Europe with his crush, Peter realizes that his job as Spider-Man is never finished and stops Mysterio from destroying London.
I'm gonna kick his ass.
Overall, an unquestionably heroic character who goes from a naive teenager to a true superhero. The Bronze Medal of Good goes to Peter's nerdy best friend, Ned Leeds. Ned is confident and upbeat, despite not really fitting in with the cool crowd.
Do you lay eggs?
He completely geeks out after finding out that his best friend is Spider-Man, as plenty of teens would, but he has trouble keeping his mouth shut about it, forcing Peter into some really awkward situations.
You're the Spider-Man from YouTube.
He offers to be Spider-Man's guy in the chair, which Peter initially declines, but later enlists Ned's help in tracking Vulture.
I can be your guy in the chair.
Ned, I don't need a guy in the chair.
Ned also saves Peter from the Shocker using one of the web shooters. He shows no jealousy of Peter's superhero status and wants to help catch the bad guys any way he can, so he earns his spot in the top 3 most good. Since he plays a significant role in both films, we're going to include Tony Stark on the list. We'll only be counting his actions in the Spider-Man movies, as it wouldn't be fair to include saving the universe from destruction on this friendly neighborhood list, but we'll be comparing his actions in this film to one of his previous appearances. To start, Tony rescues Peter from drowning after Vulture drops him in a lake. and chastises Peter for trying to take on a threat much too great for him. However, he also states that Vulture and company are below the Avengers' pay grade. Now, I have a problem with this because in Age of Ultron, Stark and the Avengers raided a Hydra base where they were in possession of Loki's scepter and the same Chitauri weapons that Vulture modifies and sells in Homecoming, and that was before Stark even knew about the Infinity Stones. The only difference is that Vulture is selling them instead of creating an army, but giving alien weaponry to felons could lead to equally disastrous results. Vulture has also been operating under everyone's radar for over 4 years, which makes him much more of a threat than Tony realizes. Still, Tony teaches Peter some important lessons after cleaning up Peter's mess on the ferry and saving lots of lives. If you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.
So while Tony isn't as attentive as he should be, he only wants to keep Peter out of harm's way and to make sure that Peter doesn't make the same mistakes that he did. Alright, giving the Edith classes to a teenager without any instruction could be seen as a reckless move, but it just goes to show how much faith Tony has in Peter. Who wouldn't want to be Tony's surrogate son? Obviously, we have to rank him with the good characters. Next is Peter's classmate turned girlfriend, Michelle Jones or MJ. She's intelligent and witty, always having something to say about her situation, though not all of her commentary is friendly.
Nice.
She deduces that Peter Parker is Spider-Man by not falling for his distraction attempts whenever he needs to pull a quick hero stunt.
I've been watching you for like a while now. It's kind of obvious.
She also recovers one of the drone cameras that helps Peter figure out he's been tricked by Mysterio. Some may find her attitude annoying and overly quirky, but she's still a good person with a unique personality. We're going to include a character who's been around since the beginning, Happy Hogan. Happy starts off as essentially Peter's hands-off babysitter in Homecoming, tasked with making sure the kid doesn't get himself into trouble.
I'm responsible for making sure you're responsible.
However, Peter's overenthusiasm grates on Happy, who becomes dismissive of Peter, even when he's trying to inform Happy about an impending heist on Avengers equipment. Thankfully, he realizes that Peter is only trying to help and apologizes for ignoring him.
I really owe you one.
He also bonds with Peter over their loss of Tony Stark and saves Peter's friends from the elemental attack in London. Well, he tries to anyway. Then he develops a relationship with Aunt May, making both Peter and the viewers slightly uncomfortable. Moving on, we have who we initially thought to be Nick Fury and Maria Hill. If you watched all the way to the post-credits scene of Far From Home, you'll remember that they're revealed to be two Skrulls, simply assuming the role of Fury and Hill. The real Nick Fury is somewhere off in the far reaches of space on a Skrull ship, soaking up simulated sun rays. This explains Fury's inability to contact anyone else but Spider-Man for a world-jeopardizing crisis and his blind trust of Quentin Beck. These Skrulls don't seem like they really know what they're doing, but taking over for the two most important members of S.H.I.E.L.D. can't be an easy job. At least they mostly have things together by the end of the film, and they know when to contact the real Fury to clean up their mess. Peter's first love interest, Liz Toombs, is next. Considered a popular girl at her school, Liz is friendly and intelligent, heading the school's academic team. She catches on to Peter having feelings for her, but unlike MJ, has no idea that he's a superhero, despite him running off all the time and saving her life in Washington, D.C. as Spider-Man.
I like you.
Unfortunately for Liz, her dad has a nasty habit of dressing up as an evil Birdman and stealing dangerous technology to sell to criminals. So Peter won't be able to hang around her for long. Liz is understandably upset that Peter ditches her at Homecoming, but she doesn't hold it against him during their last meeting before she and her mom leave town.
I guess we're moving to Oregon.
Up next is Betty Brant. Betty is a classmate of Peter's who becomes Ned's girlfriend for a short time. She runs the Midtown News and is a caring friend to those around her, but there isn't much else to say other than that she isn't a total jerk to Peter, unlike most of his classmates. And that's it for the good characters. Now let's move on to the gray area. First up are two well-meaning but comically useless teachers, Mr. Harrington and Mr. Dell. They're the chaperones for the Midtown class trip to Europe, and they have to scramble to get the students to safety during the elemental attacks.
We're leaving because of witches. Welcome to the new dark ages.
Harrington is very awkward and has apparently lost a student on a school trip before, which makes it baffling that they have him chaperoning trips in both films. And Dell seems even more incompetent in a crisis than his colleague.
Did I tell you how my wife pretended to blip out?
All in all, they really do care about the safety of their students, but they're definitely not qualified to keep track of these kids on vacation. After the teachers, we have Brad Davis. Brad used to be a fairly wimpy kid, but after the blip, he turned into a handsome jock at Midtown. He appears to be pretty friendly at first, but he takes a more vindictive turn once he starts competing for MJ's affection with Peter.
Classic MJ, right?
He takes a picture of Peter in his underwear without any context and plans to show it to MJ so she'll steer away from Peter. Brad also tries to insult Peter in front of the class when he's not even there to defend himself. In the end, Brad's kind of a jerk, but he's just a kid, so that's kind of to be expected. Next up, we have Aaron Davis. No relation to Brad, Davis is first seen trying to buy weapons from Vulture's crew under a bridge at night. He's saved by Spider-Man when a thug pulls a gun on him and is later interrogated by his savior.
Hey, I need information, you can give it to me now.
During said interrogation, Davis realizes that Spider-Man is just a kid and doesn't fall for his intimidation tactics. He agrees to help Spidey locate Vulture's next heist to make the neighborhood a bit safer for his young nephew.
I don't want those weapons in this neighborhood. I got a nephew who live here.
Davis probably has a good heart deep down, but he's still a criminal, so we can't give him too much slack. And rounding off the gray area is Flash Thompson. Flash has always been Peter Parker's school bully, but this iteration is different from the standard meathead jock we're used to.
Sup, penis Parker?
The new Flash is a spoiled rich kid and is actually pretty close in social standing to Peter. This doesn't stop Flash from constantly picking on him though. He's narcissistic and vain with no regard for others. In reality, he likely picked up this behavior from his parents, but he's still a complete jerk nonetheless. Flash is very ironically obsessed with Spider-Man and sees him as an inspiration, while relentlessly giving crap to Peter every time they're in the same room.
He's alright. He's no Spider-Man.
And now, let's move on to the baddies and the villains of the two films. Starting with J. Jonah Jameson. A fan favorite in the Raimi trilogy, Jameson makes an appearance as an Alex Jones-type character in Far From Home. During the mid-credit scene, Jameson appears with a familiar vitriolic hatred of Spider-Man as he shows a doctored clip of Mysterio's supposed dying words.
Spider-Man attacked me for some reason. He has an army of weaponized drones.
We'll discuss that in more detail later, but purposely doxing a high school kid to the entire world is just awful. Next up is Jackson Bryce, aka Shocker Number 1. This guy is a trigger-happy maniac who takes way too much pleasure in his work. If it weren't for his boss cutting him loose because he's reckless, Bryce would probably be out there vaporizing and blowing up buildings to his heart's content.
Get out of here.
What?
You're done, you're off the crew.
Though when Bryce is fired, he makes the mistake of threatening to out Vulture's business dealings to his family, which leads to Vulture accidentally incinerating him. Following Shocker Number 1 is Shocker Number 2, Herman Schultz. Schultz takes over for Bryce after the aforementioned incineration incident.
So now what?
He's the more sensible of the Shockers, but what gives him the edge over Bryce is his immediate willingness to shoot Spider-Man when he interferes with a weapons deal. That's the actions of a cold-blooded killer right there. He also attacks Peter as he walks out of the back door during the homecoming dance, but is dealt with rather quickly thanks to Ned and Peter's combined efforts. The scientist whose first appearance was actually in Iron Man, William Genter Riva, is next. Riva is a disenfranchised former Stark employee who's responsible for the development of the combat drones. He's a fairly weak man who's often berated by superiors either for incompetence or laziness, but his role in Mysterio's plot is important nonetheless. The drones could be incredibly dangerous in the wrong hands, and while Peter's hands may not have been the best, they are certainly better than Mysterio's. Riva also sends the fake video of Mysterio's death to the Daily Bugle after the Battle of London, carrying on his boss's work even after his death. Vulture's lackey, Phoenix Mason, aka the Tinkerer, is next. Mason is a loyal partner to the Vulture and the developer of all the modified weapons they sell. He's built everything from Vulture's wings to anti-gravity guns to modified Ultron blasters. In Homecoming, he's constantly encouraging his boss to go for the big one, which is robbing one of the Avengers' cargo planes.
In case you want to, go for the big one?
Simply put, if not for the Tinkerer, Vulture's operations could never happen. I suppose if nothing else, he's the most polite of all the bad guys in the two movies. movies. In second place is the Vulture himself, Adrian Toomes. Toomes is the most complex and well-written villain in all of the MCU. As far as evil goes, he has quite a long rap sheet. He steals alien technology, modifies the tech into deadly weapons and sells them to dangerous criminals, kills one of his former henchmen by accident, pulls a gun on Peter and threatens to kill him and his loved ones while dropping him and Liz off at homecoming.
I'll kill you and everybody you love.
Drops a massive concrete building onto Peter, and the list goes on with evil stuff. However, we understand his motivations behind what he does. First of all, he believes that he and people like him have been left behind by the government, the wealthy, and the Avengers.
These guys have a family. I have a family. I'm all in on this.
Tony Stark and Damage Control have taken so much from him and his colleagues that he feels it's only fair to evolve with the times as a way to survive and fight against a system that overlooks normal everyday people. Toomes also cares about his family, which is why he works to keep his operations a secret from his wife and kills Jackson Bryce, albeit accidentally, to prevent her from finding out his true line of work.
Maybe your wife would like to know where you really get your money from.
That being said, we simply can't excuse his actions regarding arming thieves and murderers with advanced technology and, trying to kill a teenager. He does get a small moment of redemption though, when he refuses to give up Spider-Man's true identity in prison, which is more than we can say for our final entry. And topping our list of evil is Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio. Beck is an emotionally unhinged master of trickery and manipulation, or as some might call him, an absolute psychopath.
Can I be completely honest with you?
Please.
He fools everyone into believing that he's an interdimensional hero here to save the planet from an Avengers-level threat, but it turns out to be one big elaborate ruse to steal the Edith glasses from Peter Parker, so that he can have control of the drone army.
This is Earth, Dimension 616. I'm from Earth 833.
Beck began as an inventor for Stark Industries, but developed a vendetta against Tony Stark for turning his hologram illusion technology into a personal therapy machine, renaming it Barf, and then firing Beck for becoming emotionally unhinged.
He renamed my life's work. Barf.
Not only does he have a passionate hatred for Tony Stark and the Avengers, but he's willing to do anything, including murdering high school students, to achieve his goals. He psychologically torments Peter with visions of his dead mentor and his friends being put in danger, and he attempts to kill Peter by pushing him into a moving train.
If you were good enough, maybe Tony would still be alive.
Yeah, he tries to kill Peter and everyone who knows the truth about Mysterio, but he also wants to maximize civilian casualties during his fake elemental attacks to garner more media coverage. Beck wants the world to view him as a hero he views himself as, and he believes the only way to achieve that is to fly around in a cape and shoot lasers from his hands. He's a truly sadistic and vile character who's out for nothing but personal glory and attention. Thankfully, he gets his comeuppance after he's shot by one of his own drones while battling Spider-Man, but not before plotting one last act of revenge, framing Spider-Man for the drone attack and exposing Peter Parker's true identity to the world.
Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker.
We'll have to wait and see where the story goes from there, but if one thing is certain, it's that there's nothing redeeming about Mysterio. But what do you think about our ranking? Let us know in the comments section. Be sure to subscribe to more videos on Marvel, as well as your favorite movies and TV shows. And as always, stay wicked.